Hi, good evening. Thank you everyone for having me guest here. It's really an honor, more an honor after the past 15 months and all the devastation, bloodshed, and the anger. My name is Hamze Awawde. I was born in a town called Dura. It's southwest of Hebron. I was born in a family of 8 siblings in total. My father was a businessman. My mother was a housewife. We grew up in a town where everyone is family, relatives, big family. We had nothing of the luxuries you have here, our neighbors had, but that's aspects. Now I appreciate it that I have only one son and I see how difficult to entertain him. When I was born, it was the end of the first intifada and the Oslo agreement, so it was the beginning of different times, hopeful times. My father, who was a businessman, had Israeli partners who would often come at home, and they were doing business meetings and social events together. We grew up dreaming, that there will be a better life at some point. But when Rabin was assassinated and all the suicide bombing of Hamas and the massacre of Abrahamic mosque in Hebron, the enthusiasm about peace started to decline since then, and we reached this point. As I was a teenager, it was even worse because it was the second intifada, and it was everything was in fire basically in the West Bank and also in Israel, and I was trying to shape my political identity, because when you live in this environment, you can't say this doesn't interest me, because the reality will force itself on you whether you like it or not. And I was not really convinced from just rational. I was into science, math, and all of that. I believed if you don't see it, it doesn't exist at that time. I changed. But violence did not really convince me is the way, because at that time was like, if violence works, it would have worked for the one who has a lot of violence. So it's a waste of time and energy and all of that. Like, better not to do anything in this case, but you should do something. And the direct negotiation that the PA had with Israel also did not change much. And I was trying to find where can I belong and who are my friends in the society, because the way you think will end up having your friends. And with the internet, I started reading about the Israeli society. I was reading the English newspaper, the English of Yedot Ahronot, the English of Haaretz, the English. And I was in love that there was diversity of opinions, because up to that time I knew that everyone there hates everyone here. Like, it's naive to think you can have an opening with but it really opened my mind that maybe this is a possibility. And then I was reading about all the non-violent movements in the world and the achievements they did. I read also about Algeria, which was a violent revolution, and it did not produce liberation until today that Algerians want. So I was like, yeah, maybe I'm not crazy that I don't believe in violence. And the first moment I went to university, I became in touch with other Israeli activists, and we created an online movement that was called Yalla Young Leaders. In 2011, I was 21, still at BZ University in Ramallah. And it meant to bring young people to meet virtually, because in reality they can't meet. All we ask people is to respect each other, respect that they come from different backgrounds and they have different narratives and they have different upbringings. And that doesn't prevent them from thinking about a shared future. That the past, they don't have to negotiate much the past, because it's gone anyway. Now there are 7 million Jews in this land, 7 million Palestinians. They have to figure it out. And when we opened the space, there was a lot of arguments, a lot of shaming and blaming, and and all. But eventually, they were friends because they didn't leave. They would still come the day after, and when they talk non-political things, they would be so much in agreement about movies, about boys, about girls. It was really so human in many ways. Even though, like, when it came to politics sometimes, and not everyone, and people changed, some people did not change. So it was an eye-opening that, you know, this is much better than violence. I mean, even though it's not perfect, but, you know, people are knowing each other, pissing off each other. That's still more civilized and more bearable than bloodshed. And was even more beautiful when we managed to take these people to meet once a year in Jordan, because in Jordan everyone could come without visas and permits. And we had also students from the Middle East, from Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, every country. And we let them stay 4 days in a fancy hotel where they get training, but also after the training they just socialize. It was really dreamland, honestly. And no one would know who's Israeli, who's Palestinian, because everyone looks like everyone when they are young. Like the way they dress and the way what they talk about. We always also try to meet officials. We were sending letters to Shimon Peres at that time as president, because Bibi would not work with him. These letters, I mean, there's no communication. To all the leaders of the Middle East, saying that the young people want their future to be different, and there's no excuses. It was really kind of like, it was also the time of the Arab Spring and, you know, all the young revolutions. We were aware that we do not want to flip the table. We want to just create the alternative and show the alternative. Fast forward to October 7th. Before October 7th, I started working with the teenagers. So I was running a summer camp in San Diego for young Jews and young Palestinians and young Americans. And we were discussing really only liberal democratic values. And then the conflict will come, because there's no liberal democratic values in Israel-Palestine with the conflict going on, because the extremists, the religious extremists will always use the conflict to deny us every other right. And this was reached always in dialogue. We were never teaching them anything. It was just open dialogue with facilitation and with just an adult who managed the teenagers. We went back, before October 7th, in that summer, we went back to Israel and Palestine, and then October 7th happened. And I look at the news. Naama Levy was one of my students, was kidnapped in Gaza. Thanks God, she's safe and back. I know that seven Israelis who died in the Kibbutzim I have met, worked with, or went to events with. And then I worked with so many people in Gaza, in that Yalla project, because it was online and we had a lot of students from Gaza, and I knew they also, like, no one will ask them what they thought, or like they are there, they will be like everyone. And I knew that nothing good will come out of this experience. Like, no matter how long it lasts, there's nothing good, nothing promising for any side. In that thing, everyone will lose. No one will make a profit. So I left Palestine. October 8th, I took my son, I have 7-year-old son, and I went to Italy because I was like, he doesn't deserve to live this. He's half Italian. I was like, he should live like Italian kids. My ex was Italian. I knew how happier she is than any Middle Eastern I met, because they didn't grow up with our traumas. They're just happier people, naturally. They're able to be happier. So we moved to Italy, and I was like, over with the Middle East, there's no hope, and so on. And then I see in the news people who are really so ignorant, speaking, putting more fire, or like bringing more craziness when we have already crazy people, bringing more problems when we have already problematic people. And there was no peacemakers coming from outside. There was no people who coming to say, you know, the loudest voices are the crazy voices, unrealistic voices. And I said, well, maybe since I have experience in this field, I should be talking. So I was interviewed at the CNN with Christine Aminapur, and she asked me, do you see hope? I said, no, but I see that we can create hope. Hope is something, somebody should create it. If you don't create hope. If I don't create hope, then why we are entitled to hope? We are not entitled to hope just because we are nice, because we have to work for it. And I started with other Israeli friends to speak in schools, universities in the UK mainly, and then I started to come to the US. And then I realized that, okay, this one day will end, but we don't have the leaders who think differently to make this the last time. So I started working with Palestinian new emerging leaders that I met through the past 15 months because I liked what they wrote, what they said. And we decided to bring ourselves together under one umbrella. We call it Center for Palestinian Workers. And center not only because it's a center, but also that we are centered toward our interest to live a life of dignity and humanity. We're not part of any axis, we're not part of any ideology. We are too small to be part of an ideology, and we know Palestinians, and I believe also Jews, they're often used in the big political games. They pretend to care for us, but honestly they don't care for us. But we're a useful tool. And as long as we accept to be a useful tool, we will keep suffering because it's us who will die in these games, us who will lose the best years of their life and our houses and so on. And I wanted to take advantage of the pain because, you know, after each ceasefire, we went into denial again and we ignored the reality, and then the reality hit us back all of a sudden again in a much bigger magnitude. And this time, we can't afford to have another October 7th and all what have. And we can't even have one that most likely will be much bigger because there's no status quo. If we're not doing healing, we're leaving the space for people who will do harm. And this is not good for me in a selfish way. And I believe it should not be good for anyone in a selfish way. Because nationalism and homeland and so on is people. If people are not fine, then who cares about the land? Who cares about nationalism and the national movements? They made us think that you die for things. No, we want to live for things. And we have to teach. This philosophy doesn't exist in Israel and Palestine, unfortunately. Everyone thinks to be a good Israeli, to be a good Palestinian, you have to sacrifice. And we see that nothing good come out of it. And these nice souls that could have been so good for the humanity are just lost for nothing. And I'm worried it will be in vain this time too, so we are trying to make a difference this time. We built it based on values. We want to live in this land in the way that anyone would live. The same I believe the Jews would want, to live in a society where you can be free to practice religion and not practice religion, to be free of movement, to be equal women and men, and everything, not only about the occupation, but if we get a state today, how the state should look like so I can feel comfortable living in that state. And we're building it from now because it's easier to start from now than if in one day we get a state and it's taken over by the people that don't like people like me, then it's not liberation. I'll stop here, but afterwards feel free to ask any question. I didn't go to offended from any question.
Thank you, Hamza, for getting started. And thank you guys for bringing us here. It's not taken for granted. We don't often see an organization, a Jewish organization, an Israeli organization who's interested in listening to new ideas about peace, about reconciliation. So thank you so much. My name is Itzik Goldberger. From my accent, you can probably know where I come from. I was born in Israel. I grew up on a kibbutz. And I went through the standard path of, school, military, undergraduate education, and came here for a graduate degree 33 years ago, with the intent of going back after 2 years, and I'm still here. So, I think something unique about how I grew up on a kibbutz, and I don't know if you guys know about the history of Israel from that perspective, but there was a military, what is it called? Military There's a word for this in English that escapes me. Anyway, in the early years, the Israeli Palestinians were not able to move around after midnight, after dark. They had to be at home, or they had to be somewhere. So, what is it?
Curfew. Martial law.
Commercial, yeah, exactly. Martial law, exactly. That's the word I was looking for. So in my kibbutz, there was a group of Palestinian Israelis that worked in the agricultural places, and they lived on a kibbutz. And from age 0, I met Arabs, and I went to their weddings, and I knew about the families, the kids. So basically, I knew about Arabs, and I knew Arabs. And in high school, I studied Arabic for 6 years. So I could learn about the culture and about the history and about the religion. And the whole familiarity with Palestinians was part of my growing up. When I went to the military, I was in the military in 1973. I was an officer just out of officer course in October of 1973. And hundreds of my friends died in this war. And my reaction was, that's the price we have to pay. Like they said in Israel, they still say it, quote it now, there was a guy called Trumpeldor. I don't know if you guys heard about Trumpeldor, but he was an Israeli hero in the beginning of the 20th century, and he protected the Jews in all kinds of places, and he died in a place called Tel Chai. And his famous quote is Tov lamut ba'ad artzenu, which means in English, it's good to die for my country. And in 1973, when I saw all my friends dying like flies, I said, it's good to die for my country. That was my reaction. And in 1982, there was Lebanon war, and I was the father of a 1-year-old. And I said to myself, no, it's not good to die for my country. It's not good to die, period. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because I want to talk to you about narratives. So every organization in every country has a narrative. Like the country of the free, the land of the free, the leader of the free world, the land of opportunities. I mean, we know the narrative of this country. And in Israel, it was good to die for my country. It was few against many. It was no choice wars. A whole bunch of stuff. And what's the purpose of all of these things that are integral part of our education? That's how we raised. It's for humans to do things that are not human, like killing other humans. That's the reason why we have such a strong narrative, and that's the reason why somebody from the Israeli consulate tried to cancel this talk. Because when you have a strong narrative, you need to negate anything that contradicts the narrative, so nobody will have a doubt when they need to go and die in a war or do anything that is not something for humans. And this is a big problem for us because the narratives that we grew up in Israel are stopping us from doing the right thing. So when I talk to Israelis about my Israeli friends about Palestinians, I get them to say a whole bunch of stuff about Palestinians, about Islam, about the Arabs, and then I ask them, when was the last time you talked to a Palestinian? And the answer 99% of the time is never. Because the narrative tells us the truth that we're supposed to know and to think, and it discourages us from finding the truth, or finding the truth about the Palestinians. So as a result of this experience, I decided to start looking for ways to get Palestinian Israelis, Palestinians in general, to talk to Jewish Israelis. I started working with an organization called Polyphony, which is a music school in Nazareth, that maybe some of you went to a concert. There was a concert here not long ago, that brings together Palestinian kids and Palestinian Israeli kids and Jewish Israeli kids to learn and play music together. And through that brings them to their families together, basically bridges the divide between Israelis and Israeli Jews and Israeli Palestinians. I joined the board of an organization called Tomorrow's Women. It brings once a year about 18 women, young women, Palestinians and Jewish Israelis, for a few weeks of like concentrated discussions about each other, about the situation, and they get to learn to know each other. So I do stuff like that. I'm also a member of an organization called J Street that is trying to influence the government of the United States to support the right people and not to support the wrong people. And we have a real problem in Israel right now, because I don't know how much you know about the democratic system in Israel, but because it's a coalition system, then you can have a small part of the country can get their way against the will of the majority of the country. And since October 7, the majority of the Israelis want to have an agreement, want to have ceasefire, want to have a political solution to the problem, and they're all dragged against their will for a horrible war that lasted way too long, for negating the most important, I'm not an expert on Jewish values, but freeing hostages is one of the, what is it called in English? Hostage release, I don't know, I mean if there's a Jewish term for this, is probably one of the top values of Jews, of the Jewish religion. And we neglected 100 plus Israeli Jews, not all of them Jews, but Israelis, in the most horrible conditions, and we didn't free them. And the subject became a point of contest between Israelis, arguing, is it right to bring the hostages back, or is it right to finish Hamas? That was a lot of discussion about it, and a lot of confrontations, and people confronted the members of the families of the hostages on the street and in Knesset committees, and offended them for fighting for the families, for their family members. And this is because of the narrative. And we have to find a way to free ourselves from the narrative and start thinking about the future. Not about the past, about the future. And how do we get out of a situation where our kids and our kids' kids and their kids die in wars? You know, and you won't hear me talk about Palestinians. Hamze is here to talk about Palestinians. But as Israelis and Jews, we need to think about that. We need to figure out, what do we learn from this war, this horrible experience? And I live here, but I never left Israel. And the experience of seeing what happened in the surrounding villages of Gaza, I try not to watch any of the movies, but just knowing about it, I have 2 daughters, and thinking about what happened to women in that event, and thinking about what happened to these communities that were very much like the place where I grew up, is just shocking. And we have to, as Jews and Israelis, we have to figure out what we need to do for this not to happen again. And if we didn't learn that force doesn't prevent it in this war, we didn't learn anything. And we need to figure out a way to finish this thing in a political agreement with the Palestinians. And they say you don't make peace with your friends, you make peace with your enemies, right? So we have to figure out, and they're not really our enemies. That's the funny thing, that some of them are. So I think this is what what I think is important for us to learn from this, and what for us to do. And just one more thing about American Jews. So I've been here for 33 years. And I know that our job as American Jews is to support Israel, whatever happens. That's the traditional attitude of all Jews in America. And we have to remember that if Israel becomes a messianic Jewish supremacy state from the River Nile to the River Euphrates, if that's possible, this is not going to be the Israel that we want to send our kids to in Fort Taglit This is not, some of our kids will join the army. I don't know if you have experience for that. This is not a place where we want to go if we don't feel comfortable and safe in the United States. So we have a job to do something about this and make sure that the Israel that we're going to have on the other side of the ocean is the kind of place that we want it to be, in a liberal democracy, in peace with its neighbors and not in constant wars. And I'm sure I gave some of you some things to ask about.
There are so many radical voices on both sides of this argument, right? I feel like those of us in this room, we could solve the problem, everything will be fine, we'll move forward together. But there are so many voices. How do we change the narrative, given that there are all of these very opposed people that need to be brought into this conversation?
Yeah, we do have a lot of crazy people, a lot of problematic people, but they have vision. And unfortunately, they are the only one who have vision, and they're loud about it. I believe visions are fought by other visions. Since I was 15, I was so much activist against Hamas. It was the election when Hamas won. I was until the morning going to campaign against Hamas. But what I discovered, whatever you resist, you resist. You have to go and champion other things than Hamas. You can't just focus on them because you just empower them, you just legitimize them, you just make them the center of everything, while you waste time building the values and the vision you want. We need a big effort. I'm talking only about Palestine because you guys, and you know Israel more than me, and you know Israel more than me. We need a lot of work to build these values and protect them, because in the Middle East, if you don't have a protector, the beneficiary of the status quo, the crazy guys, will not tolerate it. I mean, Rabin was killed. So many smart people have been killed in the Middle East just because they thought differently. And for Palestine to have liberal democratic leaders who want peace and who want the best for their own people, they need a lot of friends around the world. And when I go to talk to pro-Palestine, I mean so-called pro-Palestine, not all of them, in my opinion, are serving the Palestinian people. It's more about left-wing agenda, and I'm not right-wing. Don't listen to me. I'm just Palestinian. I'm too small to be left or right. But I told them, if you really want to serve, if you really care about Palestine, then it's about Palestinians like me, because America will not support me. I mean, the administration. Arab countries do not necessarily want to see liberal democratic leadership in Palestine, and Israel will not, of course. So it is going to be the people who support it, the middle class, the communities that have a stake on this and have skin in the game and want to have a change in the dynamic that's going there, that can open hope. This is the only way for me I can see defeating all the crazy ideologies, which is Hamas one of them, but any ideas there that have not served the people, in my side, have to be replaced with better ideas.
So on the Israel side, I think we have to start talking about values and the high moral ground. When Ben-Gurion founded the state, or started the state of Israel, one of the points that he made was that we have to always maintain the high moral ground. And the only group in Israel right now that is talking values and moral are the religious Zionists. They have a strategy, they have an objective, and they have values. And the majority liberal democracy groups, or the liberal Democrats in Israel, stop talking about values. You don't hear values. Only in 2023, when there was an attempt by the current government to do a coup and change the regime in Israel, Israelis started getting to the street and talking about equality and human rights and stuff like that. But it was ridiculous, because across the green line, on the other side of the green line, we violate every human rights that we talk about in liberal democracy. And it's time for Israelis to start thinking about values, educating the young people on democratic, liberal democratic values, and we're moving the whole agenda to liberal democracy. And for that to happen, we have to end the occupation. We were asked not to use any controversial words, but when we occupy a similar number of people to the Jews, there's, like Hamze said, it's about 7.5 million Palestinians and 7.5 million Jews between the Jordan River and the sea. And none of them is going to evaporate. And you won't reach liberal democracy by controlling, right now it's about 5 million or so of them that don't have the values, don't have the rights, don't have freedom, don't participate in the democratic process. And you need to start thinking about values. And when you start thinking about values, it's a confrontation of values. Are we going to win the majority of the Israelis that are liberal Democrats? Are we going to win against the minority who wants to make Israel Jewish supremacy state? With a bunch of 5 million or so people that are slaves of the supreme Jews. Do we want to let them set the agenda, or do we want to control the agenda? And it's not going to be through negotiation and reconciliation, unfortunately, because when there's people who are liberal and their values include meeting other people where they are and reconciliation and stuff like that, and you try to do it with people who are extreme, the only thing that happens is that people that are moderate move towards the extreme and not the other way around. So we have to do it by taking over the agenda. And as American Jews, we need to support the parts in Israel that are fighting for liberal democracy and fighting to end the occupation.
So Hamze, I want to put you on the spot for a minute. We've seen, especially in the summer before October 7th, so much pushback from Israelis against the Israeli government for a different kind of democracy. And I think a lot of uprising even within American Jews, the Jewish community, about how we need to change Israel. There's a voice, maybe not strong enough, but there's a voice. Where is this voice in the Palestinian community? How do we work with people like you? And why don't we hear this voice very often here?
Thank you for asking the question. I mean, I'm trying, and you know how hard it is.
I'm thrilled you're here, but we need more.
Well, in Gaza, let's start because Palestinians living under different regimes and different complications. So in Gaza, which is under siege, open-air prison, taken hostage by Hamas since 2007. If you dare to say anything, you will be killed. But you know what's sad? No one will know about it even. Maybe even not most of the people of Gaza. And there was a protest in July in Gaza when people went out. It was under the slogan, "We want to live Bidna Naish," and they were destroyed. They were attacked. Many of the leaders ended up leaving Gaza after Hamas released them. Many died in Hamas prisons, just for simply saying we want to live. Enough with the way of Hamas covering Gaza, with the lack of horizon, lack of hope, which is part of Hamas' business model. I mean, you need, in order to recruit people, you need also to say there's no hope. The way all the extremists always want to tell you you're dependent on us to be fine. In the West Bank, you live under the Israeli army, the Palestinian Authority. Like they share, like you really don't know who will arrest you. You don't know, if you write something on Facebook, you don't know who will arrest you first. I mean, and the reason I'm not going back because I don't know who will stop me first, literally. So when I started Yalla, instead of studying for my university exam, I was spending the nights at the Palestinian intelligence, trying to just have them let me be alone, like let me do, like I was like, everything is transparent, everything is clear. We're saying we're just cute kids, we're just trying to, like, why you're feeling threatened by us? We're not saying we're gonna overthrow the regimes or anything, but you can't even have an opinion, like, whatever the opinion, even if it doesn't have to do with politics. Being an activist is bad. Going to a cafe, they will send their spies to know what you're talking about. So it's a militarist place, and it radicalizes people, because when you can't express yourself in a civilized way, I mean, there was an American president who said, whoever make peaceful revolutions impossible, make violent revolutions inevitable. Because when people cannot express themselves, then they will be either depressed, or there will be this minority who are super angry, who will go suicidal and bring us all to hell, basically. It's because of the political environment. We also don't have a state. Like, you can't go to a court and, I mean, if you're arrested by the Israeli army, you go to a military court. The conviction rate is 99%. If the Palestinian Authority arrests you, you go to court, the judge says you should be released, and the police doesn't release you. And I know, because I know many people who, because the court was actually my neighbors when I was growing up, and I was hearing stories from people. They got the release order from the judge, because the judges are good in Palestine, but the police, it's up to them. So people end up silent, whether they like it, the good people, the smart people. And then the people who cannot be silent go crazy. So we end up with a crazy situation, because it's a radical situation, produces radical tendencies.
The question was for Hamze, but I have something to say about it. You know, disclosure, I'm married for the second time. And what I learned from my first marriage is that if I have a problem with my wife, I need to look at what I need to do to fix the problem, and what she needs to do to fix the problem. And I get a lot of questions and comments from Jews and Israelis about the Palestinians. They don't want peace, they don't want two states, they don't want one state, they don't want this, and they don't want that. And I encourage all of us to look at us, at the Jews and at the Israelis, and recognize that Israel has done everything it could since 1967 to prevent a Palestinian state. We've settled something like 700,000 Jews in the area that could be a Palestinian state. And we completely destroyed any moderate leaders on the Palestinian side. We have this statement that Hamas is an asset, and the PA is a liability. That was the line of the current government in Israel. And we have to look at what we need to do, and we need to encourage and grow moderate Palestinian leadership, and we need to keep the door open for a Palestinian state, and not do the other way, not go the other way around. I didn't mean to say anything about the question.
No, thank you. I mean, I want to follow up on what you both said. So there's so much trauma, right? And there's so much generational pain on both sides of the conversation. What do we do? I mean, you know, it feels so difficult to watch the release of the hostages these last few weeks as we're watching, with such a feeling of being filled with so many emotions, you know, a relief that they're coming home, and agony that still there are children there, and all the things, you know. And then to see what just looks like such a violent scene with the guns and the, you know, as these women are trying to go out, it feels so hopeless in that moment. Like, there could be hope, except that there's so much pain, and every opportunity on both sides to remind us of the pain just is taken, right? It keeps everything we can do to make it a more violent situation on both sides, every government is doing. So what do we do to change that narrative? Because if that narrative continues, the situation continues the same as it's been, right? So that has to be radically changed. But even in small ways, the news media and what we see, you know, it appears that nothing could change. So where is something different possible?
First of all, I don't know why you're surprised by Hamas. Something we have to learn. When the leaders of the Middle East, and especially Hamas and the Israeli government, say something, they mean it. I don't know why they always say horrible things, and they say it over and over, and they write it on Twitter, they write it everywhere, and we still don't believe it, and we expect them to behave against what they promised. This is who they are. This is what their business model. This is their politics. And they're gonna keep emphasizing it because this is how they can stay in business. I wish to tell the Israelis, you can choose your attitude under any situation, because this is what I learned when I was studying Holocaust. I studied Man's Search for Meaning by Benjamin Franklin, and he said, even for him in the concentration camp, he chose his attitude. He's not what the Nazis want him to be, he's what he chose to be. And I know it's not easy for an average human to be with that mindset. But we have to give people meaning and hope. We have to give them meaning and hope that their issues are solvable. Because right now they don't think it's solvable. Because the way you said Israelis have seen Hamas, the Palestinians also have seen the Israeli leaders and governments and their statements, and they take it fully, and they take it as all the Jews think this way. All seriously. I mean, as a child, I also thought that all Jews want to kill us. You are not all political savvy and exposed. That's people's reality that they think like this. So we have to give them. We have to tell them, no. There are practical. These are practical problems done by humans, and there are humans who can solve them. As long as we're keeping the hope that these things are solvable, then they can transform their trauma to a meaning, and it will give them good life. It's good for them. You don't heal because of others, you heal because of yourself. But if we close hope, and what's happening now is more and more closing hope, we will miss the past 15 months in the future. Because what reduced the past is now being reinvented in a bigger scale. And this is not rational. The minimum I can say. Yeah.
I wish I had an upbeat answer to this question. First of all, we have to recognize it. And, I started at the end of October 2023. I started the vigil on an overpass in Lafayette, where 25,000 cars pass under the bridge, and we put banners about returning the hostages. And personally, I didn't sleep for weeks after October 7th. And I'm probably a good representative of a lot of Israelis and probably many Jews. And we have to recognize that we're in trauma. So we cannot expect us to come out of the trauma in a snap. It's not going to happen like that. But think about other examples. Think about South Africa. Think about the Tutsi and the Hutus. There's about 500,000 Tutsis were killed in the genocide. About 250 women were raped during the genocide in Tutsi and in Rwanda, and now there's peace. It's not perfect peace, they're not lovey-dovey, but they're in peace. And the thing that made it happen, and the same thing that made it happen in South Africa with a similar bad history, Northern Ireland, Chechnya, many places in the world, is leadership. It won't happen without leadership that recognizes that it's time to start thinking forward and not back. Start thinking about our kids and not our grandparents, and figuring out a way to get out of this mess. But it's not going to be easy, it's not going to happen fast, and without leadership, it's not going to happen. And the problem, again, I'm thinking about our part of the fence and not the other side of the fence. Currently, I don't see the leaders in Israel that will make it happen. I really hope, I pray to God that they will emerge, but I unfortunately don't see them.
I know there's some questions walking around that Judy will hand me, but I just want to ask you to dream. What could this look like going forward? What might we be able to build? It probably does not look like a bunch of casinos that say Trump along the Gaza Strip, but what does it look like, maybe? I mean, what could be the best outcome that would bring a lasting peace?
Step by step. In the immediate term, I think we need stabilization so we can deal with the trauma, we can deal with the situation where pretty much everyone there is in anxiety, flight and fight, survival instincts. We need some stability. We need the fire to stop, literally to stop, no one dying, and no hostilities. Over the years, I have been recently in Ireland with my son to show him how it was possible to make peace, and we met with people from all sides. Everyone complained about the peace agreement, but everyone said, at least people are not dying now, and things are getting better. Now they have over 40 mixed schools. Before the peace process was one. It's a work. It's like what was destroyed in generation cannot be 10 perfect overnight, but problems are faced, then they're solved. So we have to face them, and we have to solve them one by one. If we don't start now, then our children will have to start, but with more depth. But it's not going to be rosy and perfect immediately, and there will be a lot of problems on the way. But the focus should be that we're going to a solution. And if there's a problem, we have to deal with it, not take it as an excuse not to continue.
I think there's huge potential for a peaceful situation in the Middle East. I think there's so much that can be done together. There's so much complementarity between what the Jews in Israel do well and what the Palestinians do well. And the cultures are complementary. And, you know, we should be optimistic that one day it's going to be great. Absolutely. And we need to take a look at other conflict situations that we had in Israel. If you think about the peace with Egypt and the peace with Jordan, I wouldn't say that it's a lovey-dovey peace. It's not that they love the people in Egypt and Jordan love the Israelis. But think about the tests that this peace went through with Egypt and more recently with Jordan. And the bad situations and all the wars in Gaza and the wars in Lebanon, and there's still peace. Peace has an amazing force. You know, people cling to peace. People, you know, to break peace, it's going to take a major problem. So we just have to give it some chance. I would say the immediate thing, we have all to commit to driving the right forces. And it's amazing, you would be surprised how much you have an opportunity to influence what's going on in Israel. Just think about where you donate money. Think about the tree that you donated to the JNF and you went to the wrong place. Give money only to people that do things that support peace and not to people, the organization that negates peace, and you're going to do much. You're going to do a lot. You'll be surprised, the whole settlement project is funded by American money, by tax-free American dollars. And you have an opportunity to help stop this.
Okay, so we have a lot of questions about leadership on both sides. Are there people who are possible leaders, and how do we support them? Are the right people out there?
Yes, I'm working with these people. I was telling Itzik, when I started with my initiative, I was so overwhelmed from the idea of reaching out to people and convince them. But honestly, since I started, I'm just responding, and like Karen saw this morning, I wake up and I start just people reaching out and asking me how can they join, because people are concerned about their own personal life, and many who already even left the West Bank and Gaza, they're still worried about their life outside and where this world is going. And they are in disbelief with all the systems that existed in the past. They failed us. Every ideology, this is their attitude. All the ideologies, all the systems, all the thoughts that we had before had to be questioned, and we have to go back to what serves us. We have to talk to Israelis, we have to talk to the region, we have to talk to our people, we have to talk to the world with a pragmatic, rational language. I mean, maybe Israelis still have a bearable situation and can afford to be crazy. But we can't, Palestinians. But also, it's much easier for us Palestinians to switch and to think differently because we have nothing to lose. I mean, the people who are in power are not actually part of the society. I mean, they deal with it as a job and they are detached. Even if some have good intention, they're detached. But we have no agenda. We are the people who are talking about protecting our families, our life, and our future. So we can, maybe that's why people easily fall in love with the idea of working about building the society, starting the conversations within the same family, because the biggest fights, I believe also for Israel, is internal. Because within the society to have the hard conversations about where we are going, which mistakes we made, and so on, it's not going to be easy. But it's a fight that without it, there's no society. There's no society that is alive and moving. There will be just a stagnant society full of radicalism and social diseases and all of that. They are there. We're looking for friends and supporters. We are many of us already in America, many in Canada and Europe. Everyone already has been doing, like me, things on their own initiatives, and now we want to be an actor so we can have a say inside Palestine. That there are people who advocate for whatever, and this is their agenda, and we have agenda too, because we are part of this game. And we're not just paying the price, but we cannot also share, or at least shape the future we want. So it's something that has to be created. It didn't exist, and we should be created. Good that we are knowing that leadership is the biggest deficit we have, and we have to do something about it.
On the Israel side, actually, I think there's some hope. If you guys followed the judicial coup and what happened in Israel in 2023 as a result of that, there was a whole cadre of leadership that is not part of the political spectrum at all. In Israel, there's bad rep for being involved in politics for some reason. People in business, there's a lot of people in the high-tech industry, and they shy away from getting involved in politics. But there was a very large group of people that led all the rallies against the judicial reform, and very capable people. Also, I don't know how much you know, but after the war of October 7, the civil society was really led by civil organizations, not by the government. In the beginning, the government was just non-functional. So there were organizations just that took the initiative and took care of people that needed to be taken care of, took care of the people that were evacuated from their homes, provided logistics for a whole bunch of stuff. There are very capable people that are willing to jump into this type of action, and I hope that out of that group, the right leaders will emerge and take us in the right direction.
Is David Newman here? No, he's our representative for the World Zionist Congress elections that are coming up starting in March. And I just want to say the World Zionist Congress is the organization that helps distribute money according to American and world Jewish votes in Israel. We are going to be asking for everybody to vote for a slate that upholds our values, our shared values. And so we can make a difference, in fact, in what Israel's doing even from a distance by making our voices heard. So that's coming up in March, more information about that. So a number of questions. I want to ask, how are children socialized to hate? So we see that on social media. How real is it, and is there a way to change it? The indoctrination on both sides. The indoctrination of a narrative from a very early age.
Social media and media are part of the war. They are tools of the war. They are funded by sources that is actors in the war. We don't have free media. We don't have at least fully free media. And the reality is the problem. I mean, the war is the problem, and this is an outcome of the problem. That means we can do something in the social media to counter that narrative, but it has to be very hopeful, very authentic, very true in order to sell to people, because the people there, Israelis and Palestinians, have very little trust anyway. Like, they don't trust things easily. So if it doesn't sound honest, it will not sell. It will not sell. So we have to do the work on social media, and I'm doing a lot on social media. Many of the Palestinians I work with are, like, for example, the Unapologetic podcast, two Palestinian activists, they did a podcast where they bring unusual opinions about the conflict, which usually pragmatic voices that, you know, sometimes Israeli who contradict the Israeli national narrative, a Palestinian contradict, just to open people's eyes and hearts. This is what we can do, but there's little we can control if the problem continues. If you want to deal with the fever, you have to deal with the infection. You can take something for the fever, but in the long run, it's not enough. So it's a work that has to be done. I honestly, you know, I see what Israelis write on social media, what Palestinians write on social media. I hate what they write and what they say, but I don't hate them, because they are also victims of that reality. I was exposed to many things, and I was lucky in life to think differently, and you and many. But at the end of the day, if we want them to change and be cool, they have the reality has to become normal in a way. Because even if people here switched positions and live their life for a couple of years, trust me, you will start developing the same tendencies, and because the reality is radical. And humans get affected by realities.
It's interesting. The Jews in Israel hate each other. Not just the Palestinians. The Israel is very polarized. And the people that listen to Channel 14, I don't know if you've ever watched Channel 14, there's anti-Bibi and Bibists, like pro-Bibi. There's anti-occupation and pro-occupation. There's a lot of polarization in Israel, and people practically hate each other. You know, over this fight about what's more important to reach the complete victory, or whatever it was called, Nitzachon Muchlat, or to release the hostages. There was a whole bunch of very hateful comments made by a lot of people. So that's not just the Palestinians. But I want to tell you a story. So I have a 15-year-old granddaughter who lives in Israel. And she has a sister, and both of them came to visit us last summer. And on the way back from the airport, somehow the Palestinians, subject of the Palestinians came up. And she said, I hate them. I hate the Palestinians. And I asked them, do you know Palestinians? And she said, no, I don't know, but they want to kill me. So it goes back to the narrative and to education. I think we have to take over the system of the values in Israel, take over the education. Right now, the education is controlled by the wrong people in Israel. And we have to start from the bottom. We have to start by educating young people to learn that people are good in general. There are bad people, of course, but not, you can't think that Palestinians want to murder you. And think about people as people, and not as a label. And if we start from the bottom and we educate people to do that, eventually one day they will be old enough to influence the reality.
But this is a problem on both sides, right? And I've heard a lot of people say that this war now will radicalize so many more young people, and that's what the future will be, is many more angry young people. So what do we do? I mean, it seems like that's it's a disaster looming, right? When there's more people born whose houses were bombed, who are angry, who have no hope and have no way to go forward. Now what?
No, I totally. Yesterday I was talking to a friend in Gaza, and he told me if, like in 2014 war, all the orphans became Hamas activists and caused October 7, you know, and he told me if we don't correct the mistakes that happened in the past 15 months, there will come a generation from Gaza that will make us miss Sinwar. And this is bad for us. This is literally what he told me. This is bad for us as Palestinians. Like he was telling me, if I'm Gaza, you know, it resonated to this Japanese saying that a child that was abandoned by his tribe will come back and burn it when he grew up. And it's the same. We have to do. I mean, most of the Gazans outside are working hard for bringing aid to Gaza, to help students and so on, because this is their people and they have to live with these people in the future. And we don't want them to lose their mind because of what happened to them. So we have to do whatever we can, and everyone has their own abilities and means to help, to show these people that, no, what happened to you was not something that the whole world or the whole Jews or the whole Israel was behind. That we see your humanity, so you see our humanity too, and do whatever needed work to avoid this eventuality. It's an open game, and the way Hamas is trying to cash on their suffering and for their own agenda. I mean, Hamas is not corrupt financially necessarily, but they abuse these things for their ideology because they love their ideology. But we have to do something to counter it, because it's a market. Whoever invests more, whoever works better, will eventually win the heart and the minds of people. Until now, they will always abandon Gaza to come back to Hamas and beg for help, and they will get the help for a price of loyalty to Hamas. And it's not the fault of Hamas, it's the fault of us. Hamas does what's good for Hamas, but we're not doing what's good for us. So we have to be there for people if we want to invest in our future. Not only because of their future, but because whether we like it or not, we live in the same world. It is what it is.
I think in Israel the situation is not as bad as it sounds, or is not as bad as it seems from what I'm saying. There's a lot of people in Israel who work towards a settlement, towards peace. And in recent surveys, 70% of Israelis are in favor of peace and in favor of a two-state solution, Palestinian state. More than 80% of the people who are now represented by the opposition are of that opinion, and more than 30% of the people that are actually in the government, and that are supposed to be right-wing, the most right-wing government, are support a settlement of the conflict and the Palestinian state. So overall, the situation is not as bad. It's just we need leadership that will take us through the process and create something that is going to be much better.
Okay, question from the audience. How do you view the UN?
I think the UN is a corrupt organization that's influenced by political agendas, and they don't add anything to the solution of the problem in Israel.
It's a very corrupt organization. I think the idea was rational. After World War II, we needed an institution to manage relations, so not the whole world end up Israel-Palestine. So the idea is good, but the people, the big fives, are holding the institution hostage to their political interest. So whenever in the past you needed to pass a resolution against Syria, Russia will block it, and China will block it, or America will block it. And it's not the idea that there should be a neutral place where problems get resolved. And this is what's not happening. That doesn't mean we have to dismantle it. We need something that functions as UN in this world, so it doesn't end up being a jungle where the strong eat the weak.
Do you think Saudi Arabia can help facilitate a two-state solution? And I'll just add to that audience question, who else might help facilitate this? And what could be a positive contribution of the American government, if anything?
So what I know, the Saudis had an offer since October 7 to Biden. It is a comprehensive deal where there's a pathway for a Palestinian state. Saudi Arabia will commit to rebuilding Gaza and supporting the Palestinian governance system and reforming it and having a functioning system. Part of a deal with peace with Israel. Biden envoys got excited. Bibi refused the deal. It's still on the table, and I know for sure Saudis will not change their mind, because Saudis cannot risk their own interest to solve American and Israeli interests. The Saudi population has been extremely radicalized during this war. And right before October 7th, the Saudis did not care about Palestinians. Nowadays, the Saudis may be more radical than the Palestinians. And even though it's a kingdom, kingdoms now in the Middle East care about the population more than democracies. Like kingdoms did not develop tools to, through political parties to control the population. If the population generally is upset about something, then they know it will cause issues and they have to respond to it. So they really can play a big role, and it's an important for Israel because they can offer a lot of things. They will offer a normalization and opening. If the Saudis make peace, the whole Middle East will make peace with Israel. All the Islamic world will make peace with Israel. Saudi Arabia is not just a very important country for religious and economic reasons. It is the only, in my opinion, Gulf state that is really as a country, like it produces everything. The people are part of the society. Like if you go to the Arab Emirates, 88% are foreigners doing the jobs. In Saudi Arabia, it's the Saudis. It's a very strong country that actually shifting from religious legitimacy to economic legitimacy. They're reforming a lot. Their transition from the religious authority will only work if there's a stability in the Middle East. So by 2030, if the MBS, the Crown Prince, fail with his economic project, it will be because of the instabilities in the Middle East, and that will be an internal issue in Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia wants peace, but peace that can serve it. And I think it's a golden opportunity for the Israelis. And the Americans should do whatever. I think under this administration, they will even ask money in order to do this deal. But any problem can be solved with money. I'm happy that Saudis pay whatever, but solve it,
This is a domain that I'm definitely not an expert on. So the only thing that I can say is that it's not going to be done by building casinos in Gaza. So the Americans have a very important role, and it's part of a much bigger conflict between America and Iran and China and Russia, and the whole idea of the Biden approach was to build an axis of sanity against all the people that oppose the modern Western world. And the situation in Palestine and Israel is definitely part of that. And one more thing that I want to say is, you can look at things as the world as it is, or you can look at think about the world as you want it to be. And we should really think about the world as it is. And the reality, I'm saying this for the Israelis and Jews, not necessarily for the Palestinians. And the reality is that the second holiest place for the Muslims in the world is in Jerusalem. It's Al-Aqsa Mosque. And the Arab Muslim world looks at the Palestinians as the guards of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And to think that the Arab countries will just abandon the Palestinians and say, it's not important, we can let Israel control the whole area, it's just not looking at the world as it is.
A question from the audience. What is it like from each of your communities knowing that you're in dialogue with the other? Is there pushback? Is there support? What are you feeling?
There's definitely a lot of pushback. So online I'm either Zionist or Hamasnik. It's usually from people who don't understand what we are doing, or people who, if they are active on this with certain agenda, they don't want us also to bring our ideas because we might disqualify their ideas. Sometimes it's really literally competition. My family support what I'm doing, which is really wonderful. I have a lot of friends who support it. I understand this is something not easy to support because you're talking about a future, something unfamiliar, something that requires a lot of growth. It's easier to go through violence. It's easier to choose violence. It's the easiest thing. You need to be courageous to choose, to actually sit with your enemy and make your enemy friend. This takes a lot of courage. I know people who would not even want to read something about their enemy. And I know it's not for everyone, but sometimes it gets worse. Sometimes, it used to be easier. Over the years, each war happens, radicalizes people and become harder.
My friends are Israelis who live in America, and I'm considered a very far outlier to the left amongst the Israelis who live in America. My friends who are part of similar initiatives think like me, so it's not a problem. But I would say that amongst the people that are my immediate friends and community, I'm considered an outlier to the left.
What can we do to help? Big governments far away, big problems far away, but a lot of energy and a lot of love and hope, prayers for a peaceful, long-term solution so that the Palestinian people and the Israeli people can live side by side in peace, and we can go and visit the beautiful seashore that is Gaza with no casinos. But what can we do from here? How can we further this message of peaceful coexistence?
I'll start. One of the things that I do is I read a lot of sources that are contradicting to the way I was raised. So I encourage you to learn about the situation in Israel-Palestine from sources that are not necessarily in agreement with your opinions, just so that you know other ways of thinking about it. I encourage you to read the 100 Years' War on Palestine. I encourage you to read a good book that my son-in-law wrote, which is called Dear Palestine, to learn about what's going on in Israel, what happened in 1948, 1967, and just develop your own ideas about what's going on there and not listen to Channel 12, Channel 13, definitely not Channel 14, the Israeli mainstream media. So that's one thing that I think I encourage you to do. The other thing is know where you donate money. If you donate money to Israel, make sure that you know exactly where it's going. And don't donate a tree to the JNF, because it's going to be used to cover ruins of Palestinian villages that were destroyed so that the original inhabitants won't go back to live there.
Can you just say the names of those two books again, please? The titles?
100 Years' War on Palestine by
Rashid Yusuf
Rashid Khalidi. And Dear Palestine is, my son-in-law is called, it's called Shai Chazkani. But there's many books. If you want more, just contact me and I'll let you know.
Hamze, what books do you think we should read? It's a good question. And what else can we do? But also, what books should we be reading?
I love a book called Jerusalem 1913. It just shows the dynamics in the year 1913 when Theodore Herzl visited Jerusalem. And what's said there contradict all the narratives and all the. There was a vibrant society in Jerusalem. There was a Jewish leader called Yusuf who was not part of the majority, but acted like a majority because everyone loved him from all communities. It speaks about the people who tried to avoid the outcome that happened. People warned. Jews and Palestinians spoke with everyone. They said, what is going, the business that's going on will distance generations of Jews and Palestinians to bloodshed, and it's avoidable. So the idea of peace is not new, it was always in our people. Unfortunately, the smart people, the people who are honest and don't have agenda did not succeed, and we need help to succeed this time. Nothing changed, we still exist in the same numbers, and we learned even more all the challenges that we have gone through. And we need support to succeed, because the bad guys there are not acting on their own. They have a lot of friends here, a lot of friends in the Middle East who are helping them achieve their goals, and we don't have friends who want our interest and want to support us to do our interest. So while you support Israel, as I said, support the Israel that you love to see, not an Israel. And also support Palestinians, because it's one ship. We can't have pragmatic voice in Israel only. We need to have it in Palestine too, because peace has to happen between both sides. So, as I'm building this organization, any support for this organization will be really valued, and it will be modeling what we are saying, that we are open and we are reaching out to create solutions and to help each other, even here in the diaspora. We don't know what's coming ahead in the coming period with all this political environment, and we need the Jewish and the Palestinian communities to coordinate among themselves so they are not part of the bigger problems here, because we are too small to be the center of this. So yeah, this is, I hope, the beginning also of long-term relationship until we can do some impact on this reality.
I want to close by asking Karen the very same question. What can we do to help, and how can we be part of what you are working on?
Thank you, Jessica, for... I have to go up there. Can you hear me?
No.
So, I was kind of jumping off my seat, because what I want to say is, if you feel drawn and you want to help, Hamze actually, all of this is funded by donations. So for Hamze to come around and, speak these really inspiring messages. So if you feel that you are inspired, we will have a donation box, a QR code, no pressure, but obviously it helps. So.
I want to thank all of you for coming tonight to a space that might have felt a little bit scary or a little bit different from the conversation that you usually participate in. And I particularly want to thank our board here at Congregation Share Israel and our president, Judy Wexler, because this has been a place where we can have conversations with people that help us to learn. And I am so privileged to be part of a place where we can learn from all of you. So to Hamze, I say shukran. That's my other word in Arabic. I have two. And to Itzik Goldberger. Thank you both so much for being here, for being in conversation with each other and with all of us, and to Karen for organizing tonight. Thank you all.